Spain is only 14 kilometers away from Africa. Why not build a large bridge to connect them? In our national perspective, Asia, Europe, and Africa seem to be three geographically distant regions. That is because we are located in East Asia, which is tens of thousands of kilometers away from both Europe and Africa. However, in West Asia, at the junction of Europe, Asia, these three continents are actually interconnected. They were even long ruled under the same civilizations. The Ottoman Empire, the Arab Empire, and the Roman Empire were all vast empires spanning Europe, Asia, and Africa. They even encompassed the entire Mediterranean region. The Mediterranean served as an internal transportation corridor for these empires. For European armies or merchants traveling to Africa, they only needed to cross the Mediterranean Sea. But traveling by land was troublesome. Due to the presence of the Turkish Straits, they might have to cross the Alps and the Carpathians, pass through Ukraine, traverse the Caucasus Mountains to enter the Arabian Peninsula, and cross the southwestern peninsula to finally reach Africa. Even today, with bridges already built over the Turkish Straits, traveling through Turkey still requires a long detour, especially for Portugal and Spain in Western Europe. Traveling to Africa by land is even more challenging. However, if we look at the map, at the westernmost end of the Mediterranean, there is the Strait of Gibraltar. At its narrowest point, this strait is only 14 kilometers wide. On a clear day, one can even see the opposite shore. If a large bridge could be built here, wouldn't a direct land route between Europe and Africa be established? But strangely, despite today's advanced engineering capabilities, the bridge between Spain and Africa has never come to fruition. What is the reason for this? Some may argue that Spain never seriously planned to build a bridge or tunnel, so never coming to fruition is inaccurate. But that is not the case. As early as the 1930s, Spain had already considered constructing a cross-sea passage to connect Europe and Africa. Yet, nearly 100 years have passed, and this idea has still not materialized. On February 5, 2022, Spain once again announced at the 12th Morocco-Spain high-level meeting that it would accelerate research on the Strait of Gibraltar tunnel project, once again expressing optimism about the future. But building such a bridge is no easy task. After all, Spain faces three major challenges. Each one is at a hellish level. It is almost impossible for Spain to handle it alone. The first major problem is the complex territorial dispute. Since Spain is the best bridge between Europe and Africa, and was the only Mediterranean outlet during the reign of the first Soviet for a long time, this place has been a battleground for the major powers of Europe and Africa. Western European Christian kingdoms and North African Islamic forces even engaged in a tug-of-war here for nearly 800 years. As a result, territorial ownership around the Strait of Gibraltar has become highly complicated. For example, Spain has two exclaves in Morocco, Ceuta and Melilla. Meanwhile, Britain also has an exclave in Spain, Gibraltar. What's even more awkward is that, although Spain wants to reclaim Gibraltar, of the 1967 referendum out of 12,182 votes cast by Gibraltar residents, only 44 voted in favour of joining Spain. Similarly, although Morocco also wants to reclaim Spain's two exclaves, both exclaves have firmly expressed their desire to remain with Spain. These intricate territorial disputes have ultimately left the construction of a transcontinental bridge in a deadlock, like 3 monks having no water to drink. Faced with this situation, if Spain does not make territorial concessions to facilitate bridge construction, it seems unrealistic to proceed. This has truly stumped Spain. The second major challenge tying Spain's hands is the cost of building the bridge. On the surface, the distance from Britain's Gibraltar to Spain's exclave Ceuta is only about 24 kilometers. And from mainland Spain to mainland Morocco, it is only about 14 kilometers. For a transcontinental bridge, this is just a small challenge. For instance, the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge spans approximately 55 kilometers, and the Qingdao-Jiazhou Bay Bridge is about 31.6 kilometers, far longer than 14 kilometers. However, once you look at the ocean, the situation becomes much less optimistic. The Mediterranean Sea covers an area of 2.5 million square kilometers. Yet, in the tens of millions of years before the opening of the Mediterranean had only one outlet, Gibraltar. As a result, the water conditions in the Strait of Gibraltar are extremely complex. Due to differences in salinity, the surface water of the Strait of Gibraltar flows from west to east, while deep-sea currents flow from east to west. This is not good news for bridge construction. Moreover, even if we ignore the water current issues, the depth of the bridge piers alone would present an astronomical engineering challenge. The average depth of the Strait of Gibraltar is 375 meters, with the deepest point reaching 1,181 meters. This is an absolutely terrifying number, because for every meter increase in water depth, the construction cost rises significantly. For example, the average water depth of Jiazhou Bay is about 7 meters, with a maximum depth of about 64 meters. Moreover, the bay is calm with little turbulence, so the construction cost of the Qingdao-Jiazhou Bay Bridge was only about 10 billion yuan. The average water depth of Lingding with a maximum depth of about 37 meters. It is located in a strong typhoon-prone area, and the water temperature conditions are far more complex than in Jiazhou Bay. It is easy to imagine that although the length of the Gibraltar Strait Bridge may be only half that of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, its average depth is about 10 times that of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Additionally, the water temperature conditions of the Mediterranean Sea are even more complex. The cost could reach an astronomical figure. Of course, if building on the sea surface is not feasible, tunnel is also an option. Spain had already planned to build an underwater tunnel. Unfortunately, technology at the time was not advanced enough, so the idea was temporarily abandoned. However, Spain did not completely give up on the project. After nearly 100 years of iterative planning, Spain's underwater tunnel plan has become increasingly refined. The total length of the cross-sea tunnel, of which 27.7 kilometers are underwater and 11 kilometers are on land, is that Spain deliberately avoided the deepest underwater areas. As a result, the maximum depth of the tunnel is only about 300 meters, which appears to be within a feasible range. However, at this point, Spain faces a new challenge: the issue of profitability. Before World War II, no one had built such a long underwater tunnel. As a result, there were unrealistic expectations about the tunnel's profitability. However, after World War II, with the completion of the Channel Tunnel connecting England and France, these fantasies were gradually shattered. Take the Channel Tunnel as an example. This tunnel consists of 3 parallel tunnels, each about 51 kilometers long. Construction began in 1987, took 7 years to complete, and cost £11 billion. It finally reduced the travel time between Dover, UK, and Calais, France, to just 35 minutes. After completion, passenger traffic was far below expectations. Not only did it fail to generate profits, even though passenger traffic is gradually increasing, the break-even point is still far out of reach. Japan's second tunnel is even more problematic, with an average depth of 240 meters, nearly 4 times the 60-meter average depth of the Channel Tunnel. Its construction period was extremely long. Construction began in 1964, and it was not completed until 1987, taking a total of 23 years. If pre-planning is included, the timeline extends to 42 years. And as things stand, its operational performance is also not promising. The second phase of the project has long been planned. Construction has yet to begin. This is not a good sign for Spain. After all, both the Channel Tunnel and the second tunnel were built in economically developed regions, struggled financially, failing to generate substantial returns. Given this, even if Spain were to build a tunnel to North Africa, its annual profits would likely be unimpressive, and breaking even would be an even more distant goal. It all comes down to financial constraints. Spain's government budget is limited, and even though the 2024 budget hit a record high, it only approved €199 billion. Although Spain estimates that building the undersea tunnel would require less than 10 billion. Projects like this almost always exceed their budgets. From the Suez Canal to the Panama Canal, from the second tunnel to the Channel Tunnel, this has been the case for almost all of them. Whether Spain can ultimately make the decision to keep funding the project, investing tens of billions of euros in hopes remains to be tested by time. Eurasia is the largest continuous landmass in the world. Africa, on the other hand, is the largest geographical block adjacent due to the presence of the Mediterranean Sea. Africa is not directly connected to Europe. The shortest distance between the two continents is only 14 kilometers. Why not strengthen land connections between the two continents by building a cross-sea bridge? How significant are the transportation limitations between Eurasia and Africa geographically belong to the same land unit? The 3 continents cover a total area of 84.36 million square kilometers, 56% of the world's total land area. However, Europe and Africa are separated by the Mediterranean Sea for 1,000 kilometers east to west. 1,800 kilometers its total area reaches to 0.512 million square kilometers, making it the largest intercontinental sea in the world. At the same time, it serves as the primary maritime passage between North Africa, Southern Europe, Eastern Europe, the Atlantic Ocean, and the Indian Ocean. However, in terms of land transportation, as well as southern European countries like Italy and Spain, reaching Africa by land requires a detour around most of the Mediterranean Sea. This involves crossing the Alps. Then, one must travel through Ukraine and other Eastern European regions, through Turkey and the Middle East to reach the southern Mediterranean coast. Due to the presence of the Turkish Straits between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, if one does not use the cross-sea bridges over the Turkish Straits, they must instead traverse the Caucasus Mountains further east. This route is not only longer but also more challenging due to harsh environments and complex geopolitical situations in Eastern Europe and the Arabian Peninsula. Africa are only 14 kilometers apart. Countries in Western and Southern Europe connecting to Africa by land remains extremely challenging. However, there is still one place where Europe and Africa can be closely connected. That is the Strait of Gibraltar. The Strait of Gibraltar is a narrow waterway separating the southern tip of Spain from the northwestern part of Africa. Its easternmost point lies between Gibraltar and Jebel Musa, while its westernmost point is between Cape Trafalgar in Spain and Cape Spartel in Morocco. The strait is wider in the west and narrower in the section measuring about 43 kilometers, while the narrowest section between Point Marroquí in Spain and Cape Sirs in Morocco, only 14 kilometers wide. Navigators along the Mediterranean coast frequently traveled in and out of the Atlantic. The Strait of Gibraltar was developed and utilized. To this day, it remains a crucial gateway connecting Europe, Africa, and the Atlantic. Moreover, the surface water flow in the Strait of Gibraltar always moves from west to east. Ships crossing the strait from the Atlantic into the Mediterranean always sail with the current. Meanwhile, the underwater currents flow from east to west. As a result, submarines traveling beneath the strait into the Atlantic also move with the current. This became even more significant after the opening of the Suez Canal became the most convenient passage for resources from the Gulf region, particularly those entering Western Europe and the Atlantic. It had rapidly become one of the busiest maritime routes in the world. Its economic and strategic value is undeniable. Additionally, due to the relatively enclosed nature of the Mediterranean, and the fact that, apart from the Nile River, there are almost no large freshwater inflows from surrounding land. The Mediterranean region is dry and hot with little rainfall. This results in a higher salinity level than other seas. The Strait of Gibraltar serves as the critical juncture for water exchange between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. It is precisely because of this connection that the Mediterranean's water volume remains stable. Thus, the strait is often referred to as the Mediterranean's lifeline. At its narrowest point, the strait is only 14 kilometers wide, between Europe and Africa. If a transcontinental bridge were built here, it could alleviate the transportation difficulties between Europe and Africa. The primary beneficiaries of such a project would be Morocco and Spain. In particular, Spain could potentially become a new logistics hub for trade between Europe and Africa. Given these advantages, why has Spain not taken action? The first reason for not constructing a bridge over the Strait of Gibraltar is the natural conditions. Although the narrowest part of the strait is only 14 kilometers, which is much shorter than the 55-kilometer Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, the 36-kilometer Kuwait Bay Bridge, and the 87.2-kilometer Arabian Gulf Bridge. The main challenge is depth. The Strait of Gibraltar is much deeper than most other straits. Its average depth is about 375 meters, with the shallowest part at 301 and the deepest reaching 1,180 meters. The water currents in the strait are density-driven, with opposing flows above and below for 100 meters. The water flowing from the Atlantic into the Mediterranean moves at speeds of up to 4 kilometers creating strong water pressure. As a result, the hydrological conditions of the strait are far more complex than expected, further increasing the difficulty of building a transcontinental bridge. Constructing a bridge under such conditions would require significantly deeper foundations to ensure stability, making the construction cost even higher than the 126.9 billion yuan investment in the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Another major obstacle is the complex territorial disputes in the area. At the eastern end of the strait lies Gibraltar, located at the southern tip of the Iberian Peninsula in Europe, an area of approximately 6.5 square kilometers in 1704, and became an important strategic location for Britain's influence over the Strait of Gibraltar. Spain planned to reclaim this area. Thus, there has been a long-standing territorial dispute over the region. The eastern end of Gibraltar's southern shore connects with Morocco, yet it remains Spanish territory in North Africa. This portion of land covers approximately 18.5 square kilometers. Has consistently claimed Ceuta as part of its territory. Thus, Spain and Morocco also have a long-standing dispute over territorial disputes among multiple countries make geopolitical relations in the Strait of Gibraltar even more complex. Under these circumstances, reaching a consensus among all parties to build a cross-sea bridge is an extremely challenging task. Even if Spain or the European Union had the capability to construct such a bridge, construction costs present a major obstacle. To resist seawater and withstand powerful water currents, new breakthroughs in engineering technology the Strait of Gibraltar lies on the Himalaya-Mediterranean seismic belt, where earthquakes occur frequently. Even after the bridge is completed, regular maintenance measures will be required to guard against heavy earthquakes, tsunamis, and other natural disasters that could impact the bridge's lifespan. The cost of maintenance alone would be a significant investment. The main market for the bridge is still targeted toward Asia and the Americas. Due to Africa's underdeveloped economies remain in an undeveloped state. Given the current economic situation in Europe, it is difficult to launch large-scale development projects in Africa. Even if Spain were to build a direct road to North Africa, profitability would likely be minimal, at least when compared to the astronomical construction costs. Recovering costs in the short term would be nearly impossible. Therefore, given the complex internal and external challenges, the construction of a cross-sea bridge over the Strait of Gibraltar remains a distant dream.